This Chat with the Experts is brought to you by Angie's List on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to Chat with the Experts, brought to you by Angie's List. I am Kyle Hawk, and I'm very glad you're joining us today. We've got Mike Bird of Advanced Restoration and Waterproofing with us, and we're leaking some important information about preventing water and moisture problems in your home. And I found some startling information in our last segment about people moving into a new home and the home inspector completely missing what could be a covered-up basement leak problem that could really cost the homeowner later on. So today's topic, basement waterproofing, very important to kind of have an idea of what you're getting into and how to deal with these problems when you find them. We were just talking about basements, Mike, and I want to talk about another area of the home that a lot of people have, which is a crawl space. Is a crawl space something that's safe from these sorts of moisture and leak problems?
Kyle, absolutely not. In fact, what we find is many times there's a larger issue in the crawl than there is in basements because people just don't want to go into them.
Sure.
They think, man, that old wet cave, nasty area, and so they'll spend months and years and never check them out. Well, when they finally have something start to move, drywall starts to crack, they get an odor coming up through their house, that's when they call us out. We go down and take a look, and by that time, maybe they've got thousands of dollars in damage.
Wow. So would you advise, what would you advise someone in that case? Should people be regularly just taking a look down in their crawl space to see what's going on, or have somebody come out and look?
Well, I think it's wise if you're mobile and you're young enough and can move around, good enough to throw on some old coveralls, get in the crawl space and take a look at it.
Yeah.
A couple times a year. That's the first step. You can always call us out. We'd be happy to come, obviously. But if you can get down there and take a look, you're looking for, odors, you're looking for wood that looks rotted, you're looking for, maybe there's 2 inches of water that's in your crawl space.
Right.
And obviously that's not good.
Yeah.
So,
one of the trickiest things about the topic today is, we talked early on, you might be someone that opens up the basement door and you find there's inches of water standing in your basement. That's obviously a problem.
Right.
Somebody else might find that there's just a leak over in this one corner. Or there's a little bit of water that pools in this one spot of my crawl space. Right. And it might be easy to overlook it. Is it possible that just one small area can be addressed without having to put a whole system in place for your entire basement or crawl space? Or how does that work?
Yeah. If you have a poured basement, meaning that it's a poured concrete basement versus a block basement, we can go in, and if we can define and locate that leak, then there's 2 ways to fix it. We can go to the outside, which it's my belief that's the best way to fix it.
Okay.
Anytime you can do it on the outside, the drawback to it costs more because there's a lot more labor involved in doing so. However, it's the best way to do it. But then if it's a poured basement, you have a crack, then what we can do is define it, go to the outside, excavate it, and fix it. Now, there is an alternative way to go to the inside. It's less costly. But then again, I would just remind people that if you fix it from the inside rather than the out, there's still water that's able to penetrate the backside of that crack.
Right.
That's what caused the crack to begin with. And so even though you're fixing it, it's just a Band-Aid. And at some point, that water is going to get back through, and you're going to have another repair that you have to make.
Yeah. That's an excellent point to make, and a really important thing to consider as you're going about that decision of how you want to tackle the problem. One thing that we haven't even talked about today, obviously, it's an inconvenience to have water standing in your basement, but another big problem with this is mold. How long does it take before mold is going to start to appear in your home? Is it within a few days of a big leak in your basement? How does it work?
Well, if you have a flood, the first thing you want to do is get that water out immediately. Hire a company, they come out, they dry it out. That's the first thing you're going to want to do. And because it'll start setting up and it'll start forming within 18 to 16 hours. You've got the wood, you've got drywall, you've got all kinds of food for that mold. For example, if you've got water, that's the main source of what causes mold. It's really the only thing you can control. You can't control your dust.
Sure.
You can't control your dirt. So you've got to control the water.
So, how big of a problem is mold? I mean, I'm hoping that most of our listeners out there understand, if they see mold in their home, they need to get it addressed. But for anybody that's listening that thinks, well, maybe a little mold isn't that big of a problem, what are some of the things that mold can cause?
Yeah, well, it can certainly cause health issues to start with. So you want to get it taken care of as soon as possible. We live in a world, there's mold everywhere.
Right.
It really only becomes a problem when the spore levels are higher inside your residence than they are on the outside.
Yeah.
Every single one of us most likely have an allergic reaction to some type of mold. Mine might be different than yours, and yours are different than mine. So we don't know that. So we need to consider all mold to be somewhat dangerous, and it needs to be taken care of.
Yeah. So if we find it in the home, what happens next? How do we get rid of it?
Well, we have to take care of one of the things that feeds mold, and the easiest way to do that is take care of the moisture. Anytime we have a humidity content that's below 50%, it leaves mold in a state that it can no longer grow.
Okay.
So we want to lower that humidity. We do that by lowering water tables, by putting dehumidifiers in and things of that nature.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask about, not to get ahead of ourselves here, but, we know there's a problem. We want to take care of the actual thing that's causing the leak in the basement. And you mentioned before the outside versus inside. If I hire you, I say, Mike, I've got a problem.
Right.
I've got water in my basement. There might be mold present. What are the first steps that are going to happen? I mean, how does the process work as you come out and start to look at what's going on?
So the first thing we're going to do is get an inspector out who's just simply going to evaluate the problem, try to locate its sources, and then offer some different remedies to go from there. The outside one, let me back up here. Outside, we say it's waterproofing in the industry. We have an outside waterproofing solution or a system. And we also call throughout the industry an inside system. We call that waterproofing as well.
Right.
It's really not. The inside systems should be known more properly as a water diversion system than a waterproofing system.
Sure.
So the process, once he comes out and takes a look, we're going to offer these two different solutions. Some cases it's one or the other. You don't get an option because maybe it's how the house is positioned.
Right.
So you can't do an outside one, for example. Once that happens and we move forward with it, then our teams will come out and they'll get started on whichever project you decided to move forward with.
Yeah. How long is a basement waterproofing job actually going to take? How long can you expect somebody to be on site and in your home working?
Yeah, on average, you can expect 5 to 6 days if it's an inside waterproofing system. Exterior, that can be anywhere from 2 to 3 days, all the way up to 2 to 3 weeks. Once again, it depends on the size.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's obvious that these come in all sorts of stages and the severity of the problem that are going to play into that. And it's going to play into this next question as well, but it's something that we have to ask, which is about what kind of cost is associated with basement waterproofing. I mean, how much can I expect to pay?
Well, we did an average here a year ago, and for our inside systems, you're probably looking at about an average of about $5,000 to $6,000.
Okay.
That's an average. When you start getting into the exterior, that's going to increase by about 3 times. So,
yeah. So what happens during the estimate process if I have, somebody out to my home and, I mean, you talked about giving the different options. Is it really just a thing where you're sitting down with the customer and explaining to them what options they have and what kind of price points they're looking at?
Yeah, so he's going to come out and first, I know when I go out and I've tried to teach our estimators and inspectors this is the first thing I'm going to want to know is where is the problem and what's your long-term goal? And that's important because I'm probably going to offer, and sometimes I'm going to offer a different solution. If someone says to me, I've got an unfinished basement, I don't want to spend boatloads of money, and this is all I'm going to do with it.
Right.
Well, that might be one solution and one price point versus somebody that says, I've got this old basement. I want to completely redo it. I want it permanently dry, and I'm going to create a beautiful room down here. okay, now we're starting to think about some other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is time for us to take another quick break here, but we've got more to come along with some tips that really hold some water. We're going to take a look at your listener questions and get you some answers courtesy of Mike Bird. Keep it right here. You're listening to Chat with the Experts, brought to you by Angie's List.
Do you love a good bargain? Angie'sList.com showcases popular deals from highly rated local companies so you can save time and money on the home and health services you need most. Remodeling your kitchen? Painting your house? Cleaning your carpet? We've got a deal for that. Angie's List members even have access to exclusive discounts, up to 80%. Don't waste another day or another dollar. Start shopping now at Angie'sList.com.